My friends call me Fluff, and today on Riffs, Beards, and Gear, I take you through the mix for Resider's Gasfight. All right, so today we are going to talk about the new single that just came out by the band Resider that I mixed and that was mastered by my good friend Shawn over at Sweetwater Studios. This was a fun mix and something a little less normal for Resider, I guess, which we will get to in just a second. First, before we go any further, let's go ahead and listen to some of the song. Then we're gonna talk about it, and then we're gonna dive in to the actual mix. All right, that is Gasfight. You get the idea, you get the flavor, you get the sauce, you get the smoke from the track. Okay, so first I always like to start with drums. Here's what the drums sounded like isolated. Pretty cool. I love how these drums turned out. Let's unsolo all of this stuff. Let's first talk about the snare. So you guys are always on me because it doesn't sound natural. As if this is some kind of I do jazz records or something, apparently. So there was a conversation with the band. They wanted this song to sound pretty dirty. They wanted it to sound gritty, almost, distorted, saturated. They wanted kind of a rhythmic, robotic kind of overtone to the song. They wanted it very dirty and kind of gritty. To that end, this mix is it's not very clean. It is pretty gritty. Especially when you go listen to the masters. There's just a lot of saturation. There's a lot of distortion on the vocals, for example. There's a lot of global saturation going on. So, let's talk about the drums. This is where I landed on the final snare sound. Okay, so we have 3 mic'd snare tracks, and we have 3 samples going on. Gotta stack them. First, let's mute these samples. Let's hear the actual snare drum. Now, I made a decision to utilize the crack and the top end of the real snare because I really liked how that sounded, and there's also a lot of ghost notes happening, and trying to replace ghost notes is actually, it doesn't sound great. So here's no samples on the snare, and I accentuated the top end quite a bit. I have silencer, Black Salt audio going on all of the tracks. Let's go ahead and turn all of those off. Coming in with some SSL. Again, I'm adding so much top end in the 8K range. It sounds good with the Black Salt silencer on, makes it all right. We're not accentuating the cymbal wash at all. Coming in with my first sample, and that is an Empty Warehouse. I don't know what this is from. Oh, GGD Slammers, Power Vault. All right. Next, we have an aux, kind of as an auxiliary sample, as it were. This is a MIDI track though, right? Because the band gave me trigger MIDI. This is Get Good One Kit Wonder Nu Metal. It's pretty low. It's not the main sample. The Grid Slammers is. And then we have a secondary, also MIDI. We're stacking. I have Gojira 2. You get nice big old snare hits. Killer. Let's go to the kick. The kick is pretty simple. This is mostly real kick. Let's turn silencer off and you can hear the actual bleed from everything. All I'm doing is coming in with some SSL, boosting the top end, boosting the low end, especially at around the fundamental, which was 63 hertz-ish. And then I am layering a sample on top of that. I'm using the new One Kit Wonder Nu Metal kick, which sounds nice. Here is the kick without the sample. So the sample is definitely just adding some body and some weight, but is definitely by any means not the main kick that you were hearing. It's the real kick. So move on to toms. Toms, I don't think I used. Did I use the real? Yeah, I guess I did. I am layering the real toms with some samples. I'm using Gojira 2 for both of the tom hits, as well as the actual toms. Let's listen to the actual toms. I think I edited these and then committed and bounced them down because you can still kind of hear the bell of the cymbal, but these sound great. And then I just layered them with the actual MIDI toms, which sound like this. Much more attack than the real toms, which, you know, when you combine the two, sounds great. Overheads. Didn't have to do much here. The overheads, I'm just doing what I normally do. Find where it feels good when I'm trying to get the kick out of the overheads. And if I am left with some snare, that's a bonus. That's great. I want the snare in the overheads a little bit. Obviously don't want it to be overpowering, but you know, I want some sound there because it does make up a fair amount of the snare sound. And I'm just compressing the crap out of it and then soothing it out a little bit for some spikiness. Next, rooms. I believe these were Lewitts. Yeah, Lewitt 440s. I'm dirtying these up quite a bit with Decapitator. It was a small room that they tracked drums in, and the rooms needed, they were too clean sounding. I don't know, the energy was there, but it wasn't dirty enough. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Compressing, going into Decapitator, and then I'm taking off some top end. You can hear kind of the size of the room. And then I am adding, I have a bus for just basically a drum crush bus. And then I'm adding, let's see, a drum reverb, like an auxiliary. It's the gated snare that you're hearing, right? From Valhalla Room. And then on my drum bus, I have an API 2500 hardware insert. And then a little bit of clipping just to keep some levelness of the snare. And that sounds like this. All right, so next, let's go to the bass guitar. The bass guitar is 100% MIDI, as given to me by the band. I mixed two different bass libraries. You gotta be careful of when you do this. However, when it works, it really works. My clean bass tone is Submission Audio's Gin Bass. My second instance is a very distorted Eurobass 3, and this is sitting and tucked underneath the Gin Bass. Just because I really like the distortion characteristic and the sound of this particular bass library distorted, more so than adding a layer of Gin Bass, all right? This is what the bass sounds like isolated. All I'm doing is compressing, EQing. I believe yeah, okay, so I'm using Black Salt Audio's low control to kind of just to keep it in check. Cornif Audio for limiting. And then I have a side chain for soothe to listen to the kick and duck when the kick drum hits. All right, so next, let's check out the rhythm guitars. The rhythm guitars are pretty sparse on this track. There is quad-tracked rhythm guitars. For one set of guitars, I used a Marshall 2203 JCM 800, and then the next set, I used a Diesel VH4. Again, the band wanted grittiness. They did not want crystal clear perfection. All right, they really wanted it to be a gritty sounding track. I did the best I could. So here's both guitars isolated. These are the, this is the Marshall guitars. Lots of upper mids and attack. We're coming in with the Cornif audio, always. We are taking out that insufferable mid-range with the insufferable mid-range filter. I'm then EQing. I'm adding some top end, also dipping at 756 because I don't want the quackiness, because again, we're stacking guitar tones. Coming in with the limiter to control the bong bong on the super low guitars. The point with this limiter is not to crush the guitars. That's not what I want to do. I just want to stay in control. All right, so on these big stabs that are an octave down, because this particular track changes from an octave down to a regular guitar tuning in the same performance. All right, so I'm just using the limiter to control the low end information. And then I'm coming in with a little bit of soothe to take out some of that brittleness. Now let's go to the quad tracked set. All right, so this will be the Diesel. Now these guitars are mostly dropped an octave low on the performance. So we're treating them slightly differently, but we're starting in the same place with the Cornif Audio amplified instrument processor. We're then EQing out some of the quackiness, adding some top end, and also taking away some of the muddiness right around 205, which is also where my snare is at. Then we're coming in with some L1 limiter. These guitars, we are limiting a little bit more than the other ones just because there's so much low-end information here. And then we're coming in with Soothe just to kind of help clean it up. And those are the guitars. Next, we have a bunch of synths. These I generally don't do a lot to. I want them in control and I want them all level in relation to each other. And then basically what I am doing is I am side chaining these to the kick and snare, just to make sure the kick and snare always stay prevalent. But generally speaking, I'm using a little bit of spiff to kind of take out some of the upper harsh transient information, and that's it. So the synths sound like this. Next, we have an effects, all the other auxiliary kind of things that we are hearing. Let's move on to vocals. Now for vocals, this is a very organized tracking sesh. Shout out to Will. First, let's start with the verse. It must be hard to speak with the gun in your mouth. Do you taste the lead? For my vocals, I am using SSL Vocal Strip 2 with the compander, de-esser, deploser, and the equalizer all engaged. I am then going into FabFilter DS for further de-essing. And then on the verse, basically master bus, I am EQing, taking out some quackiness. I'm further compressing and adding some additional saturation with Sonox Voca. Tape saturation, decapitator, and then finally L1 limiter. This is a result of me sending out revisions and the band going, nope, dirtier. Nope, more dirt. We really want it dirty, guy. And I'm like, all right. Took me a second to get what they were going for. This is what they were going for.
It must be hard to speak with the gun in your mouth. Do you taste the lead when you breathe out? The way it pays to keep those words at bay, but you can't help yourself now.
So on all the individual vocal tracks, I am doing essentially the same thing. I'm using Vocal Strip 2 from SSL, and the only difference I am doing with any of these vocals is the chorus vocals, which we will get to in just a second, have less top end, because when you stack, 2 or 4 vocals on top of each other, you really want to kind of watch the plosives and the top end. And you want to let the lead vocal have all of that attention as far as the high frequencies go. So let's check out the breakdown further. Let's dive into that a little bit. So there's a lot going on. So first, all the quad track guitars just drop, all right?
It's practice what you preach. Practice what you preach. Drop it.
Let's isolate these guitars. It sounds like a loose rubber band, doesn't it? It's just nuts.
Your teeth, bitter speech. It's practice what you preach. Practice what you preach. Drop it.
I am writing the volume on both the guitars. I'm compensating for the drop in volume because the physical drop of the guitars is so low, the volume just drops. So I have to bring that back up and compensate, but I also have to automate that back down when the regular tune guitars come back in on that part. If you guys have any questions about anything in the mix, leave a comment down below and I will try to get to it. And yeah, I'll see you on the next episode of A Mix Breakdown. Bluff out.